On the 23rd of August 1997, Nintendo 64 saw the release of Goldeneye 007. Developed by Rare and published by Nintendo, the game saw monumental success. It became one of the console's defining titles and would shift consoles and units in the millions, 8 million games sold by most estimates. Despite arriving 2 years after the movie and its title, Goldeneye was that Rare movie tie-in game that captured the essence and atmosphere of its big screen sibling. Better yet, it was just good fun. The single player mode loosely follows the antics of Bond in the movies, allowing gamers to blast their way through 20 varied levels with various objectives. This makes you feel like you're slipping into the shoes of James Bond himself. I'd argue though it was the multiplayer mode that really stole the show, a mode that was a last minute addition to the game and a mode that was thrown together with great speed. Yet many hours were lost thanks to players huddled around their TVs and blasting each other in facility. It also helped first person shooters on consoles in general. For quite a while, FPS games had struggled to define themselves away from the PC, and while some games had emerged, like Doom 64 and Turok on the N64, it was Goldeneye that really blew the door off that potential and made the console FPS feel like a massive event. Of course, with all that success, Nintendo was keen to get a sequel out the door. Rare, however, weren't so interested in doing another James Bond game and instead developed their own IP, Perfect Dark. It basically served as a spiritual successor, improving on the Goldeneye formula and is arguably a better game overall. But it didn't sell nearly as well, and as the years passed, Goldeneye entered a weird holding pattern, still adored by a generation of gamers but increasingly lost to time and a victim of changing circumstance. Rare was sold to Microsoft in September 2002 for $375 million. It ended the hugely successful partnership between Nintendo and Rare, something that's been the topic of much discussion in the years since. Rare would move on to publish some so-so titles for Microsoft, while Nintendo struggled with the GameCube for a while before finally releasing the hugely successful Nintendo Wii. Goldeneye was left to collect dust on Nintendo 64. Periodically, rumours would emerge talking about a potential remaster with online multiplayer capabilities, but this never came to be. Several games would release over the years trying to capitalise on the name value of Goldeneye in the video game space, including Goldeneye Rogue Agent and Activision's 2010 Goldeneye 007, neither of which really came that close to scratching the itch for gamers. There was a clear demand for a re-release of some kind, but N64 Goldeneye was trapped on Nintendo 64 and, outside of emulation, gamers were left to wonder if they'd ever get to play the game officially again. The problem was the rights to the game were all over the place. Nintendo retained the publishing rights to the game itself, while the James Bond license moved on to EA and then Activision. Rare meanwhile was now under Microsoft's umbrella, and them working with Nintendo seemed like it wouldn't be on the cards. For a long time, it just seemed impossible that all these different parties would reach an agreement. Then in early 2023, gamers were delighted to find Goldeneye on both Xbox and Nintendo Switch. Now let me be clear, these versions of the game are fine and perfectly serviceable outings, if a little unambitious. The lack of online play in the Xbox One version is a particular curiosity, as that would have made things a lot more enticing for gamers on that platform, while Nintendo Switch's offering is more of a basic upgrade than anything else. So why am I talking about all this? Well, it turns out that all those rumours of a remake in the mid-2000s were actually onto something. Goldeneye on the Xbox Live Arcade was a real thing at one point. In 2021, a leaked build of an abandoned Goldeneye remake for Xbox 360 turned up online. The remake was developed by Rare themselves and was in development from 2007 to 2008. 8 people were apparently assigned to the project, and the entire game was built around the framework of the original game. It was slated to release onto Microsoft's Xbox Live Arcade service and came featuring all the usual features of the time, achievements, online multiplayer, and a HD coat of paint. Levels were visually improved massively with new details, areas out of bounds, and an attempt to make the world feel more complete. For example, the dam level features much more foliage around the cliff tops, new dam surrounding areas as you're walking across the top of it, and a more visually appealing package for HD TVs. The runway actually had a proper end to it, and the surface levels are so visually expanded they almost feel like entirely new levels. But here's the thing, all of this is window dressing. At its core, this is still very much the same experience that gamers got on Nintendo 64. All 20 levels make the jump, as do the majority of the game's multiplayer segment. And the best part, gamers are able to switch graphics on the fly between the original Nintendo 64 graphics and the new HD graphics. Now this is a common feature with a lot of remasters these days, but back then it was a very forward-thinking feature. This version leaked online and is highly playable but clearly not in a 100% complete state. Some graphical issues are part of the experience and pop up from time to time. It's also clear there's a lack of polish to this beta build if you look closely at the finer details. But then again, we can't judge. This was an in-progress game and thus nowhere near what it would have been had it been given that final polish for release. The online multiplayer would also have retained the look and feel of the Goldeneye Nintendo 64 experience, allowing you to split your screen with friends even across Xbox Live. Screen watchers would have had a field day with this. It also still would have included all the original objectives, all the cheat unlocks, and the ability to take those into multiplayer. You have to understand there was so much potential in this package. Getting your hands on this build to experience it really isn't that difficult. Google will guide you, and setting up the Xbox 360 emulator is very straightforward. Various creators have taken the beta build and added to it, improving and rounding out the experience overall. There are fully functioning multiplayer modes and an active community has sprung up around this one, adding in new multiplayer levels and mod packs to spice up the experience. If you want to give this multiplayer aspect a try for yourself, I have links in the comments to Adzium3D's video tutorial on how to set it all up. I recommend giving it a watch. Is it worth experiencing? Absolutely. For years, gamers begged for a Goldeneye re-release, and when it finally arrived, it was somewhat lacking. It was serviceable almost to the point of frustration. This 2007-2008 beta showcases how ambitious both Rare and Microsoft were in trying to bring Goldeneye into the HD era. I genuinely believe had this touched down in 2008-2009, gamers would have lapped this up completely. So why didn't we get it? As I mentioned at the start of the video, legal issues and squabbling between all the stakeholders really put an end to it. Apparently Nintendo was on board until late in development when the late Iwata reversed his position, reportedly stating, "Goldeneye is a Nintendo product and should only be on a Nintendo platform." This is all pure speculation and gossip, but there was apparently a Wii Virtual Console version discussed at some point between Nintendo and Microsoft, but Nintendo left the negotiating table and Activision was already eyeing up its own remake. Without an agreement, the remake was strangled before it even got to the public's eye. Microsoft commented on the situation in early 2008 at a trade show, stating, "We would love to release Goldeneye on the Xbox Live Arcade. There is no truth to the rumour of plans to release Goldeneye on Xbox Live Arcade. While we share the gaming community's enthusiasm over the possibility, we do not have the necessary rights to release the game on Xbox Live Arcade. The rights to the title are shared between Microsoft and Nintendo. You'll have to contact Nintendo for comment." It feels like a lot of corporate pride and egos got in the way of this version ever officially seeing the light of day. Various leaks and videos would spill out in the following decade, and it became clear how close we got to a full-on remaster. Microsoft would release a Perfect Dark remaster in 2010. Which was excellent and raised the question of Goldeneye even more in gamers' minds. At the end of the day, it is what it is. To me, this is the perfect compilation of classic Goldeneye with a modern twist. It appreciates and expands on the classic levels and experience without overstepping. I'm fairly certain this version would have become a classic on Xbox 360, and even if it was released today, it would do so well. I'm going to take some time to play through the first few levels of this one, taking my time to showcase the differences between the two different modes, showing it off, and just giving you a flavour for what this could have been. So this is the Xbox Live Arcade build of Goldeneye that was never actually fully released, and as you can see, I've played through quite a lot of this. I've played up to the Aztec level, and what I'm going to do here, we're going to play through some of the opening parts to this. You can see the main menu lets you kind of do a few more things than you could in the Nintendo 64 version. There are cheats still in this one, the multiplayers are here, as well as the achievements, and you know, you can dive into the options and help menu. You can see, like I said, that I've played up to the Aztec level here on Secret Agent, not quite got around to doing 00 Agent on this one, and yes, you can activate cheats, they're all still here. The menus have been given a slight touch up, but I can't really say if this would have been part of the final experience or not. You can see that the mission briefings are still here in their entirety, which is really cool. But as you can see, the graphics here are very cool. At least to me they are. You can see that you can switch between the two as you're doing the flying, and while you're playing the game and during the cutscenes, you are allowed to do that. And Yeah, like I said in the first part of this video, that is a common feature in modern video games, but you have to remember in 2007, 2008, it would have been pretty awesome because not many games were doing that around that time. But functionally, all these levels are pretty much identical to what you would find in the original. They've added a few more details into the classic version at various points, like for example in Control, the area around where you have to protect Natalia, the glass is actually see-through in this version, whereas in the N64 it's clouded up, which actually makes it a lot more difficult because you can't see the enemies coming. Now you can see here with the Xbox controller, which I'm using an Xbox One controller while doing this, it is super easy to aim. Whether you like the redesigned weapons like the sniper rifle here is completely up to you, but again, having the choice to switch between them is kind of a big deal for me because it allows people who don't really want to engage with the new graphics, they can just ignore it, leave it completely, and if you really want to show off on your big TV, you can do. But you can see that when we switch to the new graphics, there's a lot more background detail that doesn't really affect the overall kind of gameplay, but it just makes the world feel that much more richer. And I think Dam is probably one of the best levels to show off in this regard. My aim is terrible. Yes, I know, I have terrible aim in these games. I will say, James Bond's hand kind of weirds me out a little bit in this version. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because the texture they use on his hand is a bit sort of weird. But yeah, you can see when you look up in the classic version, all that extra detail disappears. And there is a small graphical glitch over in the distance there. Of course, this is very much a beta. This was never intended for public consumption. So, you know, you have to expect that kind of thing. But then you have to understand, this is very far along. Like, all of the levels are playable. And like I mentioned, some amazing people in the community have taken the time to add to this, to add back in the online multiplayer mode. So there is definitely a community around this one, which I think is really cool. See, the gate texture there is different. I do kind of like how in the new version the cliffs look a lot more daunting and they look kind of like you're really enclosed, whereas in the original you kind of get a slightly different vibe. There's a different vibe with the new version, no doubt, but it is funny how the enemies still kind of react in the same way to sort of being shot. So even with the new sort of spruced up graphics, they still kind of fall to the ground like in that very particular way. In terms of Control though and how the enemies all behave, it's very much business as usual. If you've played Goldeneye on the N64 or Xbox One or on the Nintendo Switch, you've definitely going to feel very at home here. As we head out onto the dam here though, I just love this detail. I love how this area just feels so much more full, and I do kind of like how there are new bits added, and depending on where you kind of shoot, you get kind of different sounds. So it's very clear that, you know, they were putting a lot of care and attention into this. You can see clearly across the sort of dam here, and you can see to the far platform there. If you look in the N64 graphics, usually it's quite fuzzy, it's quite difficult to make out in the distance, but this really does realise this space quite beautifully. I think the only critique I really have of the new graphics is that at times it can be pretty dark. Now obviously we're outside here, but in some of the later levels it does get a bit dark in areas, and I kind of hope that the intention was to add a few more lights in. Statue Park in particular, I found it very dark to play through. I actually had to switch quite often to the N64 view because the new lights didn't really work too well in my opinion, and the first half of the level in particular, very difficult to see. Maybe it's more realistic, but it definitely made the gameplay experience a touch more frustrating. But as we kind of come over here, I'm just going to quickly show you, when you come all the way out to the side here, This new sort of lip at the end of the dam, it's kind of here as sort of cosmetic, but if you shoot it, you can kind of hear different sounds depending on which view you're looking at. Okay, obviously didn't mean to hit the... I think that's such a cool attention to detail, and it really does go to show that they were taking time and care with this port. I think that's important to sort of consider when talking about this one. They really were trying to make this a special thing, and I can only assume that there was more legal issues that kind of stopped this version of the game from turning up when it re-released in 2023, because I have to say the absence of online multiplayer for me, very eyebrow raising at the time, and the fact that Nintendo Switch did get it tells me that that's probably one of the things Nintendo fought for to get exclusive to their platform. But when you complete the missions, it saves automatically, and we're going to dive straight into Facility here. It's the same mission that you know and love, it just looked a little bit better. That legal wrangling, in my opinion, did a lot of damage to this game's reputation, because I've seen a lot of people say, well, Goldeneye's not really that good a game, you know, it was overrated, it wasn't really as great as people said, and to those people I always say, well, you're wrong. Goldeneye was a revolution, in particular in the console FPS space. Goldeneye really set the bar for what console first-person shooters should be aspiring to. It introduced vehicles onto consoles that you could drive. It had like variable missions that depending on the difficulty. It looked great, it played great. It was designed from the ground up as a console first-person shooter. And I think a lot of people forget that up to that point, a lot of console first-person shooters were not designed like that. Love the sort of new textures in this area, by the way. We'll take you out. It's also important for me to say that the same sounds are used here. So the sound, and it has that same aura as the original Nintendo 64 version. They haven't come in and updated the sounds. They've just given the visuals a massive overhaul. And I think that was the way to go. The sound direction in Goldeneye is very, very, very good, and you don't mess with what makes a game really, really good, in my opinion. So I'm just going to let you enjoy the ambience of this level for a few minutes here, just so you can kind of soak in what it's like to experience this, because even though it sounds the same, and with the different visuals, it does kind of have different vibes depending on which way you choose to play. One of the more obvious changes in this version is there's no more Dr. Doak in the facility level. Yes, unfortunately the Easter egg that was part of the N64 version for the development team has not made it over, and it kind of makes sense because obviously, you know, it's nothing to do with that development team here. But it is a bit of a shame, in my opinion. I do think had this released onto the Xbox 360 marketplace or the Xbox Live Arcade service in 2007, 2008, 2009, it would have done incredibly well, because that was kind of the golden era for these kind of smaller titles. The Xbox Live Arcade really had a great culture around it, and there was a lot of smaller sorts of titles that really flourished during that time and became real darlings of the Xbox 360 catalog, like Geometry Wars, for example. You had Doom 1 on there, you had like your Splosion Mans, Missplosion Mans, games like that that really sort of flourished on that service. And I feel that had they been able to get this onto that, this would have only added to that aura, because I used to play with a group of friends back then, and we used to play games like this all the time. So this definitely would have fit into that, you know, rotating schedule of games. And the intention clearly in this version was to include Xbox 360 Online as a key component. What I do like in this version as well, and it's something that you don't notice until you're actually playing it, you can actually flip between weapons and key items like the door decoder there using the B button, and really love that, because in the original you had to go into the watch, you had to sort of fiddle around with the menus, but in this version they kind of put that small quality of life improvement in. They also do Trevelyan a tiny bit dirty here. When we go up and talk to him, you're going to see that he's kind of more generic. They've definitely done him a tiny bit dirty on that remodel, just in my opinion. If it definitely doesn't look like Sean Bean anymore. It looks more like just random guy, but it's all personal taste, really. But look at the back of Bond's hand there. Like, maybe it's just me, I don't like the new skin texture on Bond's hand. It's one of those things that just icks me out a little bit. I'm not sure why. It's just something that, in the back of my mind, it just gets me whenever I see his hand like that. You can also see here that they've implemented the cutscenes, although the music cues for these have not been put in properly, so you can hear that it's still playing the level music, and that kind of gives you an idea of whereabouts they were in development. They were just finishing up with the level playthroughs here, and obviously the fine-tuning of the music hadn't quite made it in. We'll be seeing you later. But yes, all of the tricks and all of the little tips that you probably used in Nintendo 64 Goldeneye, you can use them here. They really don't do anything to stop you. This level gets a massive glow up, in my opinion. This is the kind of level I think that really benefits from the new graphical approach. Although I will say it is kind of funny, you can see out the sides of the doors here in both versions. Don't think that was a thing in the original. I'll have to have a look at my N64 footage later on. But what I do appreciate here is that they actually put a proper end on the runway. It's always been something that's bothered me, because in the N64 version they kind of put like this weird cliff that's very low textured. It's very low quality texture, and it's kind of there and you see it when you're running towards the end of the runway, and it always catches my eye for the wrong reasons. So I'm kind of glad that they came and addressed that. But you can see here how everything is aesthetically very similar, but they've just made a lot of tweaks. So for example, the side of the facility there is more open, there's some trees back there. It just helps to fill that world out, and you can also see that the way the cliffs are kind of handled around the outside also kind of just makes it feel like a more real place. Now obviously if you've seen the movie, you'll know that the runway is actually on top of like a big cliff, so this isn't really anything like the movie either. So even on the second attempt, they're taking liberties with what the movie had on offer here. But it's still fun, it's still nice to see, and here is the tank. Again, I kind of prefer the new graphics on the on the exteriors there. I think it just looks better. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's better lit, but I think that it kind of just looks really, really nice. And yes, you still can run over the enemies. There's nothing to stop that. But you can see what I mean by when you look at the end of the runway there, there's just that big sort of barrier in the distance. How did you miss every shot of that club? I know I'm a bad shot in this game, but you know, that just felt really, really like awkward. What I'm going to do here quickly, I'm just going to go to the end of the runway. I just want to kind of show you like the level of detail they were kind of shooting for, because it really does make some of these levels just feel better. Not all of them, some of them are worse, but you can kind of see when you shoot on the old one, there's kind of a barrier, but when you shoot on the new one, the tank bullet actually just shoots through. Again, really, really nice attention to detail there. I've wanted to cover this for a long time, so it's really, really nice that I've kind of reached the point with the Goldeneye videos where I can actually start covering this and sort of integrating this a bit more into the series. So I am going to be doing a lot more with this version, so if you want to see specific things, let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching. If you really enjoyed what you saw here and want to consider becoming a channel member or Patreon, you can get access to exclusive videos and exclusive posts about the channel and its future.